viewers, this is Lisa with Queen Bee Creations. I'm here today with Facebook Live. Every Monday at 2:30, I go live with a free online class, basically, to show you guys how to make something. It's always my goal to make it simple for you. And I was asked today to do a twisted gatefold card. And what that is this little thing here where it's pops open kind of zigzag. And so I'm going to make that one for you, and then we're going to make another one because I thought this was a little bit of an odd shape, and I've got something very similar that I like a little better. So we're actually going to make two cards today, and I invite you to join me. Of course, everything I use is Stampin' Up! Related and can be purchased in my online store. So I do appreciate your support in buying your supplies through me. So this is what we call a twisted gatefold card. And I looked all over and all the measurements were kind of the same. And I don't know, it's little to me, which I guess would be, fine. It does fit into an envelope, I guess a little sideways. Maybe that's why it's the size it is, so that it can be mailed. So we're going to do that one, but then we're going to do another one as well. In order to make this card, okay, we're going to start out. This piece is 4 1/4 by 7 1/2. And then I scored at 2 1/2 and at 5. And I did that on my trimmer. And then I brought in the trimmer again, and I laid this point and this point in the track, and I scored. And so I scored this way and then this way. So if you just feed it through, they're both going the same way. And that's what's going to make it fold together in the middle. That's all there is to that one. Okay, so then we're going to need 4 pieces. I have 1 Whisper White, 2 1/4 by 4. I have a piece of the Designer Series paper, again, 2 1/4 by 4, and then 2 more pieces of Designer Series paper, 2 1/4 by 4. And what I'm going to do is, this is going to be our inside one, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that whole, but these other ones are going to decorate up all these panels. And so I'm going to cut those in half diagonally. And so I'm, again, going to lay that in the track. I'm putting a point in either end. And then I like to come in with my blade in the middle and go up and go down. I just find when I start up at the top and I go into a point, there's a chance that I can smush, fancy word there, the point, and I don't want to do that. So there's one. And that's it. That's all our pieces. Now we're just assembling. So, I mean, really, the hardest part was just the score lines, and they're not even that hard. So to decorate it, I'm going to bring in our base, and then I'm going to stamp on our insert for the middle. I'm going to use Rococo Rose for the flower. I'm actually going to bring in some scrap here. I try to keep my mess out of camera view. And then I'm going to take this same flower and I'm going to do the outside with it, but I'm going to do a 2nd generation stamping. So I inked it up fully. Then I'm going to stamp off, and then I'm going to stamp my flower. And that just gives me a lighter color. Of course, it wasn't very even, so let's try that again. That's why we don't glue until we're ready. There, that looks a little better. But I did that because I want to go ahead and do the inside full strength. And so that's how I got kind of 2 shades of the same color. You could also try just 2 shades, one lighter and darker. But if you're trying to save money and don't have all the colors, a 2nd generation stamping is always a good way to go. Oh, and then our sentiment in the middle. I'm going to pull out this "You Are Amazing." This fold came at a request of one of our viewers. I always encourage you, if you've seen something out there and it looks a little complicated and you want me to simple it up for you, definitely send me a picture, send me a link. and let me know you'd like to see it. I'm always more than happy to help. So this is going to go here in the middle. Glue on our little triangles with the liquid. Okay, so I'm going to take this. I'm going to make sure I've got a little teensy bit of glue in the corners. I don't want those to pop up. We don't want to use too much because it'll kind of make the designer series paper warp a little if it gets too wet. So I guess you just want to pay attention when you're doing your slicing if it's going the right direction for the side of the designer series paper you want to use. So it's a good thing that our paper is pretty on both sides. And those are going to go there. Like I said, if you have a preference for which side of the designer series paper you want to use, just keep in mind where you're putting them and decide if you need to cut from the top left to the bottom right or the top right to the bottom left. You can fix the warping a little if the glue is still wet. I have in the past run a credit card, over it to try to smooth it out and see if I can eke some of that glue out the side, and then use my adhesive remover to remove off any excess. Once it dries, kind of not really, you could probably put, books on it or something, anything else we do with warped paper, and that might work, but it's best just to go lightly with the glue. And with any time we have a gatefold card, when we put the front element on, we don't want to adhere it on both sides. We only want to adhere it on one because we still want to be able to open up our card. If I had glued both sides, it's going to be stuck closed. Sorry, I'm just thinking that flower needs a little bling. This is our Take Your Pick tool. And picking up and attaching rhinestones is just one of the many uses. Also, if I'd had a little more time, I would probably have some leaves come out from behind the flower, and I would do that by stamping the flower onto a Post-it note and then fussy cutting it out and then setting it on top of this flower, stamping my leaves and then pulling it off. It's called masking, and you always want to stamp what you want in the foreground first, cover that up, and then stamp your background. Okay, so this is our twisted gatefold card. Now I promised there was another card that I'm going to do, and so let me show you that one. I actually don't have it all the way together. But the idea is that this is going to do the same kind of diagonal open. But it's all going to be flush. It's not going to be popping over the side kind of weird. And it's going to be the full A2 size and fit into an envelope. So let me show you how I did that one. I took 2 pieces, 4 inches by 10 1/4. And then I scored them the same way. I scored them at 5 1/2. And then at the 6 1/4, I just made a little mark with a pencil. And then I brought in my trimmer and did the same kind of thing. I'm going to go from that little mark down to this point. So then you would just score that, both pieces, and then the 2 are going to be glued together on the bottom. So we're just going to overlap. I mean, you could have just a little 1/2 inch hang over the back, but then it kind of looks like, it was added on later. It's up to you. I chose to do the full length of the card just so it, it doesn't really point out that it's double layered unless you really look hard. As you can see, that comes neatly together in the middle. And then we're going to assemble in much the same way. I'm going to come in with a piece of Night of Navy, 3 7/8 by 3 7/8, and then a designer series paper, 3 3/4 by 3 3/4. I'm going to cut them diagonally on our trimmer. And then this piece that's going to go in the middle is going to be 5 1/4 by 3 3/4. Because these are a 1/8 of an inch difference, this is going to give us that teeny tiny border. If the teeny tiny borders bother you, you can always cut on the quarters. It just would have a thicker border. But I just wanted just a hint of that dark color coming out from behind. And you can tell I need a new blade. And so it's got a little bit of a fringe to it. And I'm always trying to make my blades last as long as they can. And so I keep this little block of sandpaper. And every once in a while, if it's just a little bit of a fringe, but I'm not quite ready to change my blade yet, or I'm in a hurry, then I have this little sanding block where I can knock those things off. And then this is just a layering oval. I use the layering ovals dies, and I used the largest scallop and then the second largest straight or oval, because I was going to make this a birthday card, and the happy birthday fit right down the middle of this one beautifully. Sometimes the photopolymer stamps have a little bit of a film on them, which is from the mold, because of course they're like, you know, cookies. If you want to be able to pop them out of the mold, they have to have a little something that helps them release. And so if they're not grabbing ink really well when you first get them, then you might want to rub over the back of them with a red eraser just to roughen it up and take off that little coating of film. And as I'm thinking of that, somebody contacted me the other day that they had some really old stamps, and I do too. And after a while, the red rubber stamps, if they've been exposed to air for a really long time, they're going to get stiff and hard, and they're not going to stamp really well because they're not going to have that give that we're used to rubber having. And so what you want to do is you want to put a little bit of glycerin over the top. So if you have some from the store, you know, if you went to the medicine counter at any grocery store or drugstore, you can get glycerin in a bottle. They use it for making bubbles and such. And if you put just a light coating of glycerin over the top and let it sit overnight, it really softens this up and makes it stamp much better. If you don't have glycerin and you're in a hurry, don't have time to run to the store, then what you can do is ink it up with your Versamark pad and then leave that overnight, because Versamark has glycerin in it. And so that will help soften. Also, that's the reason why I like to use the Stampin' Mist with my red rubber stamps, because the Stampin' Mist also has just a teensy bit of glycerin in it. So as it cleans them, it also conditions them and keeps them nice and soft and subtle and supple, and they stamp well. So just a little information. So I'm going to just do a couple flowers. Seaside Spray and Petal Pink. I know this is going on a little bit orange, but as it dries, it does become more pink. So I stamped with the same color into the middle of the blue flower. And as you can see, you can see the middle, it's just not quite as bright as if I would have stamped off first before doing the base of the flower. And then I'm going to bring in a leaf, and because these are on the edge, I can kind of fake it a little bit, and I don't have to do as much masking. So I can just ink up the leaf and then just have it come in from the side. And again, I didn't add much of the green. It's just a little hint coming from the outside. And I really like the effect that it gives us. It just makes those flowers look that much more grounded. Don't forget to share your creations on the wall over in the creativity realm. You might get a little goodie in the mail. Another thing I can do, like I said, for the inside of the flower, if I didn't do the stamp off, we can do a color that is just slightly darker. Okay, so I had happy birthday on the outside. So we'll go with you mean so much to me. I really am using this roller a whole lot more than I ever did the snail, but it does require that little flick at the end if you don't want to have to advance it every time you use it. In the past, I've always put a little glue dot on the end of my ribbon and then stuck it down to itself within here. Oh, there it is. And it works when the ribbons are new. As it gets a little bit older, it's deeper down in there and harder to get off. So I've since changed to giving it a little flip at the end and putting the glue dot on the outside. So much easier to find and so much easier to use that way. But what I'm going to do is just give this a little bit of a belly band out of ribbon in order to help it stay shut. And we have the bow maker tool, which of course, when it's on the card like this, we're not able to use. But another thing that you might want to have in your little arsenal is a pair of these reverse tweezers. Have you seen these? You squeeze them and they open, and then when you let go, they collapse. And so you can put that right there in the middle over the knot so it doesn't move. And then you can tie a knot and then pull this out. And then at least when you're working on your bow and it's not quite right and you're having to untie and retie and mess with it a little bit, the knot is there, so at least you don't lose the part of it that's wrapped around the card, keeping the tension. But again, I would just kind of mess with this a little, pull it up to the center, you know, underneath the phrase. And then work with this bow until it was, you know, smaller and neatly hung below the phrase. But that's another version of the twisted gatefold that allows you to open it up at that diagonal. So there you go. There's card number 2. And here is card number 1. Coordinates. So again, thank you for joining me. I do appreciate all of your business and your support. And I encourage you to join me on Thursday mornings. We meet on Zoom at 11. You can always contact me for the link. And we just get on there and just chat and, you know, work on our own stuff and just kind of get rid of this isolation feeling of being in quarantine by being able to hang out with one another and craft. And then, of course, I'll be back next Monday with another Facebook Live. Thanks for joining me. Bye.